Hey there, everybody. This is Hearthwalkers, the Hearthstone and Magic the Gathering podcast. This is your too long didn't listen. There is so much stuff happening because it's 2020, but we can't talk about any of it yet. But I do want to talk about my favorite creators, and the world is ending. Let's start the show.
We have not started the show yet, right?
Oh, it's always starting.
Fuck. Hello, and welcome.
It's time to
bingo! Yes!
Pull up a chair by the hearth.
Hearthwalkers, a Magic the Gathering and Hearthstone podcast.
What's up, everybody? This is Hearthwalkers, the Hearthstone and Magic the Gathering podcast. My name is Wholfie. This is episode 13. It's 2020. Oh my god! Oh man, 2020. It's happening. We're being productive in the new year, and we're doing the podcast. We kind of missed a week-ish. We missed like half a week. We put out a bonus episode. If you guys didn't see that, go check it out. It's about the Pokemon trading card game, and it's pretty cool. And on this episode today, we got you guys. There's not a lot of stuff happening right now besides spoiler season for Theros Beyond Death. And we're not going to talk about that until next week's episode because I want to review all the cards and just let you guys know, like, the cream of the crop, right? Like the cards that you should be looking out for. I don't really want to go through every single card on a podcast. Plus, everyone else does that. So if that's what you really want, you can go check out someone else's podcast. I don't mind. I'll be right here because we're talking about other content creators today. We're talking about other content creators. We're going to touch on some stuff that's happening in Magic the Gathering and Hearthstone. And yeah, we're going to talk about the stuff that I listen and watch. So without further ado, let's start with the news.
News team, assemble!
I understand you are in need of support.
Good news. I've arrived.
Alright, that was some great news, some top tier news. Let's start with Magic the Gathering. We're not going to be talking about spoilers on this episode, like I said. We're going to wait until all the cards come out so we can make a nice round comparison of new cards coming in compared with what we have in the meta. But Mark Rosewater did put out a little, kind of like an article on the Magic site called At Death's Door Part 1, where he kind of introduced the design team for Theros Beyond Death, and he went more basically on the flavor of how the set was designed visually, and like bits and pieces from the visual design team. He also released a spoiler for a card, which I did see. It's pretty sick, but we're not talking about it. So if you want to check out the actual article, it's really interesting on how they design. They work from like a set idea, and they kind of like, oh, we want to do a Greek. They're talking about like the first Theros, so like, oh, we kind of want to do like a Greek mythology set. Okay, well, we need to kind of find some Greek mythology experts, right? Like we need people on our staff that know what they're talking about. And then they kind of waited until the right time. They had it working for like maybe 10 years, I think, and they just didn't pull the trigger on it until people were ready. People wanted it. So obviously the first Theros set was amazing. They specifically only hinted at the underworld in the first set so that it would set up this next set, which is actually kind of cool that they're thinking that far in advance. And that's basically, if you guys want to learn more about that, check out At Death's Door Part 1 on Wizards of the Coast site. Moving on, Magic the Gathering Arena. This is like the bottom of the barrel news, but the January season just started. It's technically the 3rd of January today, but this month's a little bit weird because we have a new set coming in on the 24th of January, which is Theros Beyond Death, which means two things. One, the Mastery Pass for Throne of Eldraine is ending on that day. On the 24th, when the new set comes out, the new Mastery Pass will begin. If you guys don't remember what the Mastery Pass is, it is like a little bonus thing you can buy, kind of like a season pass in most games, where you get bonuses based off of experience, and you get experience by how many times you play, you get a pet, you get all this cool, neat stuff. And it's nice because you don't have to pay real world money to get it. You pay the in-game premium currency, which is gems, but you can grind the gems out. I right now have enough gems to purchase the Mastery Pass for Theros Beyond Death when it comes out, just because I've been grinding a lot of games. Also to note, last time we had the Mastery Pass was with Core Set 2020, and And when that set was about to rotate out with the new set, Throne of Eldraine, they had a mastery, kind of like mastery week, where there was certain events that you would play that would give you bonus experience for like every 2 wins. That way people could catch up and get the levels that they needed to level up certain things. There's certain milestones you can get at, I think it's like 20, 40, and 80. Your pet levels up and he gets like bonus accessories. I'm still trying to get to that last one, or it's like 80 or 90. And then you also get a masterwork like exquisite card sleeve at level 100. And those ones, I missed out on the first one, and I really don't want to miss out on the second one, so we're grinding that out a little bit. And you also get a lot of rewards. If you get all of your rewards, which is all the way up to level 100, then you get like 75 to 85% of the money, quote unquote, resources that you put into the Mastery Pass back, which is actually like a great value. Plus on this one, they added like an infinite reward, so that every level you get after 111, you get a free uncommon that has a 12% chance, I think, of leveling up into a rare or a mythic. So I'm sure the next Mastery Pass is going to be really cool. We talked about how you can buy it on the last episode with the pre-release bundles. So that's happening soon. Keep your eyes out open. If you need to grind out some levels, get out there, grind some ladder levels. Our standings from last season, I want to talk about real quick. December, we hit the ladder hard. I don't even know why. I think it's because the next set's coming out. So we're going to have this month to get to Legend, or Mythic, sorry. And then once we get into Mythic, if you get into the top 1,200 of Mythic players, then you get invited to a special arena event that lets you compete for Mythic points. Now, my theory is going to be that if we can get into Mythic before Theros comes out, we can sneak our way into the top 1,200 with some weird, janky deck building with the new cards. So we're going to look into that once the set comes out at the end of the month, on the 24th. So there's like a week from the 24th to the 31st where we can sneak up the ladder. Moving on to Hearthstone news, HS Replay, which you guys might know as the guys that brought us the Hearthstone deck tracker tool, released a super cool 2019 graph as a GIF of the percentage of decks played for the entire year of 2019. If you guys want to actually take a look at the GIF, I reposted it on Twitter at Hearthwalkers, plug. But the graph is super interesting. It shows basically all 9 classes and the percentage of all ladder play for every day or every week of 2019. So I think it's like every day. And it kind of just goes on throughout the year. You can see how decks fluctuate, when there's different like meta changes, when you can tell when the new sets come out, because every class just kind of goes crazy for a little bit, and then it'll settle into like one class archetype, and then it'll settle again. And there's some surprising stuff that we found out. Number one of all, Hunter has been OP way longer than Shaman has. So Hunter, for around like 6 months of the year, had been either the top deck played in the meta on ladder, or around 15 to 20% of decks played, and was like second or third place in the top 3 for most of the year. Shaman kind of started dominating around October and has only been around like big since October, just only like 3 months ish. Actually, I don't know how to count anymore. October, November, December. Yeah, this is like 2.5 months. All right, you guys. Right now, Rogue is the most common deck at around like 20. But when Descent of Dragons came out, Shaman pushed way above 30% of decks played. That's why it was being so, I don't want to say aggressive, but like overrepresented. I think at the peak during 1 week, it got up to like 38% of decks played on Hearthstone was a version of Shaman, and it no other deck throughout the year, granted, got that high in terms of percentage, but Shaman was only there for about like less than a month, like a couple of weeks, and then we had that emergency nerfing to Shaman, and now it's kind of going on between Warrior and Rogue, as it kind of always does. I think historically Rogue has always been really well represented during our global championships. Warrior is always a solid deck to play in most games, as long as you're okay going long. And then Warlock and Druid have had the lowest amount of decks played, period, all year, which is actually super sad, and it makes me really sad. But it kind of explains a lot of stuff. This data, even just this one graph GIF was so cool, because it feels like to me a lot of people are kind of just net decking at this point. They'll go online, they'll go on HS Replay, they'll go on, what's the other one? They go on sites like Hearthpwn and kind of just look up a top tier deck or like a really popular deck, and they just run that. And when there's a group of people, like say a famous streamer that we'll talk about at the end of this podcast, or like a largely followed content creator makes a video and like, oh man, this deck is OP, or a lot of pro players are playing a certain archetype, or they say that this archetype is the best, then a lot of other people will kind of bandwagon onto that, net deck whatever they had, get as close to it, and then they just run it. That doesn't mean that's the best deck. First of all, that just means it's the most popular deck. Second of all, piloting matters. If you have the best deck and you give it to someone that's only been playing Hearthstone for like 3 months, or someone that's been playing Hearthstone for 2 years and they're just bad at it, it's going to work and play a lot differently than someone that has been playing Hearthstone for a long time and is good at the game. They can pilot the deck a lot better. So don't be dismayed. Net decking is okay, but brewing is where it's at, you guys. We gotta make Druid good again. Hashtag make Druid great again. Hashtag World War III. No Paladin. Actually, Paladin's doing normal right now. Paladin's in the middle of the tier. Blue Kitty loves Paladin. It's fine. Right now, mid-range Paladin is a thing. There's this cool like mech death rattle Paladin going around right now. But a lot of this, actually, we're gonna talk about right now. The next part of our news, Power Syndicate is a esports collective, sort of, that they run data for Hearthstone. I think they have an app. I'm not entirely sure how they get all this data, but they have a more numbers-driven, data-driven version of what HS Replay showed. They do it for the monthly tournaments, conquest tournaments. They do a lot of stuff like that. They do a lot of ladder tracking, and they break things down into deck archetypes as well as class. And if they don't have enough data for a certain deck, then they'll have it like in an honorable mentions slot. And that Paladin deck that I was talking about was one of those that's like kind of like trending on Hearthstone and sites like that, but it hasn't been played long enough, or it doesn't have enough games under its belt to be represented well enough. But they did come out with their data report for December and kind of recapping that last chunk of 2019. And what they found out was that after Descent of Dragons came out, Tier 1 decks included Galakron Warrior, Resurrect Priest, and Pirate Warrior. Tier 2 represented by Galakron Shaman, Death Rattle Rogue, Highlander Rogue, Zoo Warlock, Galakron Rogue, and Token Druid. A lot of Rogue in there. Tier 3, we had Highlander Hunter, Hand Warlock, Mech Paladin, Face Hunter, Highlander Mage, and Tier 4, we had Holy Wrath Paladin and Galakron Priest. I'd like to point out, Holy Wrath Paladin was like one of the top tier decks throughout the rest of the year since the big kitty came out for Paladin. Holy Wrath Paladin has been a top tier deck, and now it's been demoted to tier 4. Not saying that it's a bad deck, but you really need to pilot it pretty darn good to get some wins off of it. Token Druid, one of my favorite decks, falling into the bottom of tier 2, and Galakron Warrior, Resurrect Priest, and Pirate Warrior. Surprisingly, Pirate Warrior kind of is only good in like ranks 15 to 5, and then the other two definitely longer game time taking to play Galakron Warrior and Resurrect Priest. They're tier 1 for most of the meta. But yeah, if you guys want to check out more of that stuff, well, links in the show notes / description of this episode. If you guys play Rogue, tell me, just tweet at me how much fun you're having, because it is disgusting sometimes how good these rogues are recently. And with that, we're moving to esports.
Venusaur with a question mark.
Get down!
Welcome back!
All right, we didn't really have any esports to talk about today. Woo! I know there's some tournaments going on. Magic Online has leagues that end every week. We're not going to be talking about that. There's not any major events going on right now. There's not any major news going on right now. There's a couple of GPs that got announced. There's a couple of Mythic Mastery Grandmaster events for Hearthstone that got booked. I think there's just one in Singapore that actually got confirmed, but no news yet on our Rivals League or Mythic League in Magic on the new roster of people that are coming in and out. We haven't heard any news on that, and there's no news yet on the Grandmasters roster fully, any more news for Hearthstone. So not a lot of esports stuff going on right now. There was one blog post about the global games for Hearthstone that came out December 22nd, and we covered the winner on the 16th of December, so I don't even know what they're doing over there. So congratulations again to Denmark. You destroyed everybody apparently, and they took home $20,000, so it's not a bad gig if next year you want to compete in global games. Apparently not a lot of people care about it, so maybe they'll take it seriously next year, who knows, but we're moving on to our main topic.
Because I'm an adult, and when I attend a conversation, I bring my own memes from home.
Use your bolts of lightning!
What? My hair is on fire? I know.
All right, main topic time. It's been a couple of hours since we recorded literally the last part of the podcast, but everyone's asleep. We're going for it. We're doing it. I want to talk to you guys about some content creators. Now, I wouldn't consider myself per se a content creator. I'm doing this because it's fun and I like it and it'd be nice. But when you are a quote-unquote legitimate content creator, you kind of have to keep in touch with what's going on in the realm of what you're doing. You got to keep up with other YouTubers, other Twitch streamers, other podcasters. You know what I'm saying? So I try to keep in touch, not in touch like I'm contacting them, but I want to keep up with some of these, more specifically podcasts, because sometimes it's the only way I can consume media for the day because of the kids. And especially with YouTube videos, Twitch streamers, because I love doing Twitch streams and stuff like that. So that's what these creator showcases are going to be about. We'll touch on some high-end content creators. We'll touch on some creators maybe you haven't heard of yet. Maybe you should check out. So we're going to start off with Hearthstone and the Angry Chicken Podcast. Now, if you guys haven't heard of the Angry Chicken Podcast, if you search Hearthstone on any of your podcast providers, they will probably be the first ones to show up. Definitely the more popular on the side of content for Hearthstone. They've had Blizzard developers on the show. They've had pro players on the show. Garrett and Joss are the co-hosts, and they do an amazing job of keeping everything up to date in terms of news segments, and also keeping a pulse on the meta and different maybe meta decks that you might want to try out. Things like that. They're super funny. The podcast itself is done in an audio format, and then they also live stream each episode on Twitch, exporting that onto YouTube as well. So they're on every platform you want to find them. You will find them. Do not worry about it. Both of them are huge Blizzard enthusiasts. Crazy WoW Lord players, World of Warcraft lore players, and how that connects to Hearthstone. So getting that kind of perspective is really cool, since I never played World of Warcraft growing up or at all. So me loving Hearthstone, it's nice to listen to how these Hearthstone characters kind of were developed in World of Warcraft, how they're different from game to game, how when Galakron was announced, I had no idea who Galakron is, but apparently he's the world eater dragon progenitor of all things evil and stuff like that. So it's cool. It's a good podcast. Both of the hosts are super funny. They have their own socials, their own Twitch streams. They're definitely on the pulse of the meta, what's popular in the Hearthstone community. They just started instead of trying to do a new podcast, they just did a new segment on their show for Battlegrounds. Battlegrounds being huge for most not only auto battler people, but also Hearthstone players in general are really liking Battlegrounds. And for a long time, that was the only content that was coming out. No one was playing ladder around a couple of weeks before Descent of Dragons came out. There was just nothing but Battlegrounds. And people were like, oh yeah, Descent of Dragons spoilers are coming out, but I gotta grind Battlegrounds ladder, and then it's a good show. It's very well produced, and yeah, it's great. It's awesome, super cool. Moving on, check them out. Omnistone is getting a special mention here. Omnistone used to be a team. I think they technically were an esports team where they sponsored Firebat, Zalay, and some other guys. Ike was he was kind of there, and they had some players that were like on and off, but the Omnistone show, I wouldn't say it's a podcast, but it was basically a podcast that they didn't export out to audio only platforms. They only did it on YouTube and Twitch, but you could theoretically say they just watch the audio only on Twitch. But it consisted of Frodan as the host with Brian Kibler, Firebat, and Zalay. Usually they did have some other players / content creators / pro players, but for the most part it was those four. Zalay came in a little bit afterwards. It's really, I wouldn't say it's refreshing, but it's very informative to get this sort of information and this particular view from pro players, because like I said, Zalay is a grandmaster along with Firebat. Firebat was our first Hearthstone world champion for the first season of competitive play. They have a very specific mindset when it comes to the way these cards interact with the meta, how decks work, how different formats work, from ladder to conquest to whatever the new one is. They had Brian Kibler, which is a Magic the Gathering Hall of Famer, and he just started doing Hearthstone content when Hearthstone came out because he left Magic for numerous reasons that we do not have to get into right now, but he is like a grandstand of this podcast because he's been able to hop back and forth between those platforms, games, also working with Riot to do a TFT tournament, stuff like that. Like Brian Kibler he's pretty good, right? So Omnistone, we touched on it on like 2 episodes or 3 episodes ago, but Omnistone is officially disbanded, and they're going to be just a quote unquote app developer for Hearthstone stuff. Maybe they'll branch out, but I wish them all the best. And it was actually kind of cool because each of the hosts was already a big content creator beforehand, and then they kind of came together into this all-star show under one flag. They kind of folded up and coming players and content creators into the mix, and now they're kind of just off on their own, which is pretty cool to see. So rip Omnistone. Hopefully they'll be back. Next is Regis Kilburn. He's a up and coming streamer primarily. I'm sure he has an editor that does all of his YouTube videos, but primarily he's a Twitch streamer. He got invited to do a couple of stuff with Blizzard specifically because he's up and coming. He's a really nice guy looking. I don't know how that came out, but watching his Twitch streams, it's just a nice wholesome experience, and I think that's why a lot of people are drawn to him. He's funny. He's genuinely a funny person, and it's just a good time. I don't know what else to say. I just got turned on to him when he guest starred on the Angry Chicken podcast, and I had never heard of him before, and he was on the show. I liked him on the show, so I checked out his stuff, and it was actually pretty good. It was pretty good, so I kept watching. Next, Crip and Disguise Toast and Trump HS. I'm kind of going to bundle these 3 together because if you search Hearthstone on YouTube, they are the top 3 that show up every single time. Same on Twitch, they will be the top. Disguise Toast specifically gets a special shout out because he actually jumped shark from Twitch and got a streaming contract with Facebook Gaming, which is crazy to think that a card game streamer got an exclusive streaming contract from Facebook, the same way Ninja got one for whatever that streaming service is, right? But he's still going strong. Disguise Toast was definitely the more popular content creator that has been around for a while. I would say Trump HS was kind of Trump and Crip have kind of been around for a long time. Trump is kind of moving on. I wouldn't say moving on from Hearthstone, but he's definitely been branching out and doing more sponsored streams for other games, which is kind of cool to see. And Crip, his videos are like, they're just good. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. He's very informative when he talks, but he's not boring. His Twitch chat is crazy. Like, they love him in the best way possible. He has a very strong community, I guess I would say. And it's just a good time watching his stream. Like, he'll stream when he does the videos. So during the stream, he'll do the intro for the video, and it's kind of cool to see that. And like all the little background stuff in between, he kind of hangs out, and then he'll do like the meat of the video, which is like actual games and like explaining how a deck works or talking through his process when he's playing Battlegrounds. And it's nice to see that sort of process taking place, but most of the time it's kind of boring because it's just people talking about their moves, and I'm trying to like work out of that when I'm streaming, because I'm literally just like, oh, we're going to play a land and then do this, this, and this. We're going to do A, B, C, D, and E, and then pass the turn. How do you make that exciting? Turn after turn after turn after turn, and that's something that somehow Crip kind of figured out in his own way to keep his audience engaged, and they love it. Like, he's like the most stable content creator on this list, I would say. But yeah, all three of them are great. Go check any of them out, and you'll I feel like each one has their own flavor, and certain people will tend to fall in line with certain creators for those three specifically. They're like the big three. And then lastly, for Hearthstone, I wanted to give a shout out to the Lightforge podcast, which is a arena specific podcast. Kind of cool. Hearthstone, as you know, has limited modes. I don't mean limited like in terms of Magic the Gathering, like limited, but limited in terms of it doesn't have a lot of modes, which is sad. It has Standard, Wild, Arena, and now they have Battlegrounds. For a long time, it was just the first three. And Arena is now, in the Magic term, Hearthstone's only limited format, where you instead of like opening up a pack, picking one card, and passing it, you're drafting by yourself, and you get offered 3 cards, and out of those 3 cards, you pick one, and you do that 30 times to fill out your deck. There are certain nuances that come into it. There's a certain limited philosophy that you have to go into it. It's not the same as Standard. Cards that are good in Standard aren't always good in Arena. Arena cards aren't always good in Standard. And the Lightforge podcast has been around for a long time, like at least 2 years, I think, now. And they've been doing only Arena specific shows. And it's great to see them sticking by it. And whenever there's like a patch that's specific for Arena, or they really dig deep into fixing Arena problems, it's great, because I want to know what's going on, and I go to the Lightforge podcast to find out what happened. Moving on to Magic, huge shout out to Loading Ready Run. I've spent so many hours watching their content. These Magic ones are going to be a little bit more expansive because I played Magic way longer than I've played Hearthstone, just in terms of like when I started playing. But Loading Ready Run, it's a Canadian-based collective, I guess I would say. They do a whole lot of stuff. They have a big old studio. They stream almost like 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. They have a lot of like crew members that each of them has like their own show. If you go check out their channel, you will find something that you like. Guaranteed. Each of them has their own personalities, they really let that show, and I think that's one of their strengths, is that they have such a variety of people that they can kind of fully encompass a lot of things. But specifically, a lot of them play Magic. More importantly, they support like Canadian Highlander, which is like a very specific format, and they also work with Wizards of the Coast. For a long time, they were doing Friday Night Magic, which was a web series, video series that was scripted, which is nice because you don't see a lot of scripted content when it comes to video games, but it was scripted, it was funny, and it would always come out like with a new set. So the new set came out, and then they would come out with like a Friday Night Magic video, and it was kind of loosely based on the new set themes and stuff like that. So like when Throne of Eldraine came out, they came out with a Friday Nights video about fairy tales and stuff like that. It was cool. It was Wizards sponsored, so it was nice to have that, like, oh, okay, I know I get a new Friday Nights episode because Wizards is sponsoring it. But they also do the pre-release, which is one of the coolest things that I get to see when it comes to new content, which is also Wizards sponsored, they get to run their own mini pre-release a week before the actual pre-release. So if you want to have that quote-unquote competitive edge, or just want to see what kind of new stuff is in the set, or how certain mechanics work with others, they do like a judge video where they explain the new mechanics that I know they've said that people are allowed to take that part of the video and show it at their LGSs, because a lot of people were doing it and like asking permission. So they were just kind of like, yeah, just take it, it's fine. And then they go through the whole pre-release, which is cool. You get to see all the new cards, and it's a week before you can go do your own pre-release. So it gives you time to it's like 5 or 6 hours. So it gives you time to you don't have to watch the whole thing in one sitting. You can actually take your time, watch a little bit here, watch a little bit there. Oh, I don't like this matchup, I'm just going to skip and watch the next game, stuff like that. Next will be the Command Zone podcast. Now, if you guys are into Commander, you listen to this podcast, almost guaranteed. They're one of the biggest content creators for Magic, and they create content specifically for Commander, which is a different format than the most popular formats, being Standard and Modern. I would say Commander is if it's third, it is a close race to the popular game formats when it comes to Magic the Gathering. But Josh Lee Kwai and Jimmy Wong are amazing personalities and content creators. I've learned a lot just by watching their videos, and not necessarily for Commander itself. They do delve into other topics. They delve into deck building. They delve into game strategy and play strategy, using politics to help win over multiplayer games, using philosophy and using it as a deck building tool, stuff like that. They cover a wide range of topics. They've done 400 episodes of the podcast. They do the Game Nights show. I'm going to say show. The Game Nights show, which is always so good. Every time we get a new Game Nights, it's so sick. It's so good. That one is, for the most part, Commander specific, but they bring in people from all over the Magic community to come in and play. Those are almost always sponsored by Wizards. Every now and again, whenever a new set comes out, there's always kind of a Game Nights that accompanies it also, so they can show off some of the new cards. And those are always fun to watch. I'm glad that they're finally in a spot where they can keep doing what they want to do, but also move the quality up and up and up and up, and just keep doing better and better. So when you listen to the show, you start liking these people, and they start revealing stuff about their lives. That's always the best part. So Command Zone podcast, if you're not listening, go listen to it, because it'll make you a better player, period. And then on top of that, we also have Limited Resources. I didn't put that on my list, but Limited Resources is a limited specific podcast for the limited, mostly draft, not really sealed, but for draft in Magic the Gathering. They've also been going on for 300 plus episodes, and right now it's hosted by Luis Scott Vargas and Marshall Sutcliffe. Marshall Sutcliffe's been with the podcast since the beginning, and they've shuffled around the co-host a little bit, but Luis Scott Vargas has been the longest standing co-host, and also a Magic the Gathering Hall of Famer. He also co-founded Channel Fireball and is a developer on the Eternal card game. So why wouldn't you want to hear his take and advice on a very popular format? When you go to FNM, sometimes you don't want to play Standard. You just want to sit down, don't bring anything, and just play some draft. And these guys know what they're talking about. They make the show interesting every time. They have incredibly good tips. And listening to the show has definitely made me a better player, not only in Limited, but also in Standard. And just the way that they break things down is so digestible. In terms of a podcast, it is a great podcast. They have not started doing too much video stuff yet, but I hear that it's coming. It's on the rise. So Limited Resources, check those guys out. Next, they're not in any particular order, so I apologize for that, but Quest for the Jank Lord is a video, a YouTube channel that I just found out and started watching a week and a half ago, and they're doing Commander stuff, sort of. They're doing a pseudo scripted Commander video show where the whole premise is that these 4 guys wanted Magic cards and they're broke. So they signed a deal with a demon to get magic cards. But the demon tricked them because he's a demon, and they got a bunch of Fallen Empires packs, which is the worst set in Magic ever. And now their souls are eternally damned, and the devil makes them play random games of Magic too. And then like the winner gets to like go to the real world for like a month while everyone stays in hell and gets tortured and stuff. The writing's pretty funny. They do like random commander where they pick a random commander and then have to go build a deck and they play that. I think the other ones were Brawl, where they would have to go to their LGS and just get a bunch of standard cards and make a Brawl deck. They had a couple of good ones, and the writing is good. Like I said, it's just a nice time to, like, if you want to see some commander, some Magic gameplay and have like a nice janky story around it. It's pretty cool. The theme song is incredible, and they are starting to get like popular guest stars like Commander's Quarters, which we'll talk about in a second. He did an episode and I just watched it. It was awesome. But yeah, it's a great show, and they're just starting out, so you guys can be like on the front end of that. Next, Commander's Quarters. Hey, so they're another commander format centric show, but they take it from a budget perspective. They are video only on YouTube. And it's just one guy doing the videos, and he basically tries to make decks under like $50. Most of the time it's like under $20, I think, or $25. Most of the money going into the commander and then just bulk cards. So essentially, if you had, if like the deck is like $25, if you had $25, you can go onto like Channel Fireball or TCG Player or MTG Goldfish or what have you, put the entire list into your cart, and it would come out to $25. And then you just have a deck, right? That's the premise of the show, and he does an amazing job of creating these budget decks and still having them be very competitive, very cohesive. The deck building skills that this man has are, I would say, unrivaled. He did an episode on the Command Zone, and they were talking about how like he flew out over to LA to do the Command Zone, and they were playing games the night before, and Josh Lee Kwai and all of the Command Zone guys had like just their normal decks. Like, oh yeah, I pulled this card, I'm gonna put this in. Like, I would say plus $100 decks, and then here's this guy going toe to toe, winning some games with literally $25 worth of cardboard in sleeves. So it just goes to show the power of deck building and being able to creatively think your way out of situations that money creates when it comes to Magic the Gathering. Like I said, strictly YouTube for now. He does have a podcast out now called the Commander Quarters Podcast, I think it's just that. And I've only checked out one episode of it, and it was pretty good. They do mostly just interview stuff, which is actually pretty cool. And it's great. It's all good. Moving on, we're talking about Tolarian Community College, which as of a couple of weeks ago became the highest subscribed Magic the Gathering YouTube channel, period. Higher than Wizards of the Coast, higher than Magic the Gathering Official, stuff like that. I didn't like Tolarian Community College when I first came across it. I didn't like the professor at all. Just the way he talked was very cringy at times. That was also like 2 years ago. He did get better, and I do like his videos now. He started doing a series called the Booster Box game, where he would go to his LGS, buy a box, and then open up every single pack, trying to get enough value to buy another box. And then he just keeps going until he runs out of boxes, like he can't make the money back. And that series in particular sucked me back in. Everyone likes watching people crack open packs, but now we're rooting for the packs. We have a reason to watch. We have a reason to be like, oh man, I want him to crack open like a Nico foil showcase, whatever, and go buy like 2 more boxes, right? He also does a lot of reviews for ancillary Magic the Gathering products, reviews for card sets, reviews, anything related, even closely related to Magic. I'm talking like sleeves, I'm talking deck boxes, card binders, all of that stuff. He's done a review video on it, and sometimes it's like, yeah, what are the best sleeves to buy? Like, I want to make sure the hundreds of dollars I've spent on these Magic cards doesn't just go away because I spilled some water on the table and they seeped into my sleeves because I had bad sleeves. So definitely check out Tulare Community College. You'll find, especially now, he's taking it so much more seriously, and he came out like a thank you for the subscribers kind of like look back video at all the time. It kind of just fell on New Year's, close to New Year's also, so that was kind of like whatever, but he did say that he's planning on doing a lot more stuff. He's done a lot of scripted stuff too, which is interesting to see, and it's nothing but up for Tulare Community College right now. Next, we're going to talk about Ristic Studies, another YouTube specific channel. Ristic Studies is interesting. They do he does video essays, and video essays themselves are super intriguing to me, and I never have enough time to watch them, which sucks because they're so good. But the video essays, usually he'll do them on Magic the Gathering, like a specific Magic card or an artist spotlight. The videos themselves, like the video quality, the editing is so good. So much time was spent on editing, on the sound mixing, on making the video itself look good. And then on top of that, the content and the stuff that he's actually talking about is really good. He's talked about like the jankiest combos, and like I can't remember the name of the card, but it was like this one card that literally did nothing. Like it said discard your hand or something, and then he was like, yeah, this is like most people say this is the worst card in Magic ever. So why did they make it? Because you could do this, and this, and actually do something cool with it. And I was like, oh my god, that's sick. And then he does artist spotlights where he kind of like examines the artist like for Magic the Gathering cards and some of their other work and how it kind of interacts with Magic itself, which is really interesting. If you guys are a fan of video essays, check out Ristic Studies. He does not upload a lot. I think he's uploading like once a month now, which is actually like a lot for that channel specifically. It started out like just whenever he finished a video, he would upload the video, and sometimes there was like 3 months in between videos. But I've been following him for a while, and his work has just been going up and up and up, and it's great. So check out Ristic Studies. We're going to round off the YouTube guys. I'm changing my list up a little bit because I'm flying on the edge, but we're talking about the last YouTube channel for Magic, Alpha Investments. Hilarious. If you guys want something funny and informative, check out Alpha Investments. They do Magic the Gathering finance videos. This is finance for Magic the Gathering, secondary market stuff. Rudy is the creator that we're talking about here. He's not sponsored by Wizards of the Coast. Proudly not sponsored by Wizards of the Coast. He was a finance man before he started making these videos and taking Magic the Gathering basically as an investment opportunity, like buying boxes and crates of Magic cards, and that he would like speculate on that would go up in value, and then selling them when they went up in value. So it's crazy just watching his videos. You'll have different backdrops of just boxes and boxes and boxes of card packs and boxes, like crazy amounts of just cards that he owns. He also did a series where he opened up his own card shop, which is super cool. If you guys ever wanted to know like the inner workings of a card shop, check out this series. It's like 12 videos, 20 videos. He literally goes through like the paperwork that he had to fill out after he found like finding a location, setting the location up, getting the like not furniture but accessories for like a jewelry case and those crate like fake wall things to hang stuff on, and like how to set up the shop so people don't break into it. All the paperwork he had to sign for leasing a location for a business, working with Wizards to be able to sell product from Wizards of the Coast, working with distributors, what even are distributors and how that works and functions, buying collections from people and selling stuff online. His videos are super smart, and he's just a hilarious, just super funny guy. Out of all of the people that we've talked about so far, I would literally say that he is the funniest creator that we've talked about so far. Later on, I have some funnier people, but for Magic the Gathering, for sure, funniest person, Rudy. Check out Alpha Investments. Lastly, we're going to close out with another podcast, Humans Who Make Magic. This is, I forget who the creator is, but he does interviews on the actual creators themselves. They usually don't even talk about Magic. They talk about like life experiences and like what brought them to Magic, what brought them into content creation, how they're doing it now, what were some of the pitfalls, literally all the interesting stuff that you want to know about some of your favorite content creators. Also talked to pro players, a lot of pro players actually, but then also casters, how they got into casting. He's interviewed the ones that I listened to. He was talking to Marshall Sutcliffe and Luis Scott Vargas. Those were super great because it's interesting the differences between Hearthstone and Magic as a content creation field, because you look at Hearthstone and they have bigger numbers than Magic does, but Magic's been around for a lot longer. So why is there such a gap, especially with Magic Arena now becoming like a really big digital platform for card games? How are they not bridging this gap yet? Well, I think it's because a lot of people go into Hearthstone because of the content creators and the personalities, but then how come Magic can't break that divide with their personalities? Oh, like a lot of Magic players are kind of boring. I'm just saying, So it's the people that are making the stuff that you're watching and finding out what makes them tick is what this podcast is about, and it's great. Like, it's so crazy cool finding out some of this stuff. Like, it's just super interesting. So if you like this sort of interview format podcast and you like people who make Magic stuff, check out this podcast, Humans Who Make Magic. It's super good. Moving on. Oh man, I need a drink. Cold brew. So now this is my other category. By other, I mean other content creators for card games. There's not a lot here because there's not a lot of other card games that I'm like super invested in right now. Maybe on more down the line, but I'm trying, you guys. I'm trying. So first we have Nymm, Nymm. I don't know how to pronounce it. He has another handle, and I don't know what it is because it's not his channel name. That is his channel name. He's a content creator for Yu-Gi-Oh! And he has been invited to some Magic the Gathering like Grand Prix like a year ago. He was doing some Magic the Gathering content, which is nice to see, but he hasn't kept up with it. I don't know if he's going to keep up, start it up again, but primarily Yu-Gi-Oh! Content creator. He'll do not even deck techs, but like kind of deck techs, and then mostly vlogs. Like he's a big vlogger, and he's really good at it. He's funny when he needs to be, and he vlogs when he goes to like big Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournaments or local game store championships, and he'll do it in terms of a series. So the latest one was called Local Town Hero or something like that, because he was home for the holidays and he was like, I want to make a series while I'm here, and the series is going to be, I'm going to go to every local game store, like in I think he drove out like 2 hours to get to one of them, but there's like 6 in that like 2 hour radius. He's like, I'm gonna go to every single one and I'm gonna win a Yu-Gi-Oh! Champion, like little mini turn thing. Alright, and we're just about 12 hours after we started recording this podcast, and we're going to keep going. Nymm also did the sickest video series called... You know what? I don't remember what it's called. It's basically, he started out with 3 structure decks for Yu-Gi-Oh! And would buy every week or every installation of the video, he would buy 1 sealed product. I think it's called sealed only, but he would buy 1 sealed product for Yu-Gi-Oh! And without trading or buying singles, he would build a top tier deck to go to like a Yu-Gi-Oh! Championship and try to place in the top 8. He didn't make it, but the series itself was so cool, and just his vlog style and editing skills were so top notch, and the idea was like just so fresh that it got copied over and over and over again. And it's a really neat series to watch, where you see him tinkering with the deck over and over and over again with literally just whatever he gets, it's really nice in terms of deck building. Moving on though, we got Ruggles. The new creator started literally like a couple months ago with a video entitled, "You guys, I think I'm gonna get back into Yu-Gi-Oh!" Sorry, he's a Yu-Gi-Oh! Person, but he used to play Yu-Gi-Oh! As a kid, and then life happened, and now he has this YouTube channel where he uploaded 1 video about him trying to get back into Yu-Gi-Oh! He bought 2 structure decks and a bunch of singles off of recommendations from big Yu-Gi-Oh! YouTubers like Ruggles, like Simo and Nymm and others of that sort. And he does the exact opposite of this sealed only thing that Nymm did. He does the vlog style thing a lot too, but he's literally throwing money at it, and he was like, hey, let's get back into Yu-Gi-Oh! 100%, throw a bunch of money at a bunch of singles, try to make a top tier deck, figure out how to pilot it at like local tournaments, and just see what we can do. And his channel started blowing up after like the first and second video. It's crazy. If you guys want to check him out, I think he's got like literally 5 or 7 videos total at this point. Definitely in the infancy of his channel, and he's an interesting enough guy that I could see a lot of growth coming out of this channel. Next would be more like the higher tier Yu-Gi-Oh content creators, Cimo, CIM, and then multiple O's after that. If you search Yu-Gi-Oh Deck Tech probably, or like Yu-Gi-Oh just on YouTube, he'll be one of the top people that shows up. He does like Yu-Gi-Oh news, deck techs. He does these interesting like deck building challenge videos where he'll take other content creators in the community and they'll do like build a deck with forbidden cards and banned cards only. Or he did a sealed one where they only got like 8 packs between him, and he did it with Nim, and he's like, hey, let's just open 8 packs online using like a pack generator and then build a deck based off of the cards that you get in those packs. He also did, I remember the last one he did was like a Christmas themed gift deck thing, which was pretty cool because the last time I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh! I was playing 6 samurai decks, and I had this really cool Bad Reaction to Simochi gift card deck. If you guys don't know what that is, I'll explain it real quick. There's this card called Bad Reaction to Simochi that says whenever you gain life, you lose that life instead. Basically, it flips it around because there's this really weird card called Gift Card that just gives your opponent 3,000 life points, and that's all it does. So if you just play 3 of those, and while Bad Reaction to Simochi's on the field, then your opponent just lost 9,000 life points, and everyone starts the game out with 8,000 life points. It's a neat little OTK that I love playing around with. So that Simo's a good content creator. His content is pretty good. He has the heart of the Yu-Gi-Oh community for sure. What he is to Yu-Gi-Oh, to Larian Community College is to Magic, Crip is to Hearthstone. All of these guys are like the main drive for the online community for their respective games. Don't mind the background, that's just Gabe playing with one of the Christmas toys. Next, I want to talk about the Jwitz, the JWITTZ. He's a primarily Pokemon video game content creator. I would say Pokemon in general. He does Pokemon in general stuff, but he has started branching out to do more kind of like Yu-Gi-Oh! Magic kind of stuff. But now like Sword and Shield's out, so he's doing Sword and Shield videos. But the Jowitz has also done a lot of Pokemon trading card game material, stuff like that. He's one of the only content creators that I've seen around doing a lot of Pokemon trading card game stuff, and I know he knows what he's talking about because he's a big video game Pokemon content creator. So that's why I watched his stuff, because I knew about him from the Pokemon video game stuff. So when he came out with like trading card game stuff, I wanted to watch that too. So the Jowitz, great content creator. You guys want to check that out. And then lastly for this category, this one's going to be a little bit weird. I want to talk about Mtg Nerd Girl. Mtg Nerd Girl is almost strictly a Twitch streamer, but she, regardless of what her handle is, she does a lot of different kinds of content creation. She is primarily a Magic streamer, but she's one of the only sponsored Teppen content creators. Teppen is the new mobile game for Capcom characters, the Capcom IP. If you guys haven't checked it out on your mobile devices, because it's actually pretty cool. It's a time-based card game as opposed to a mana-based card game. In terms of resources, you have mana, like a mana source, but it is generated based on how long it takes you to do things. Like the longer you wait, the more you generate, as opposed to like drawing lands and like emblems and stuff like that off the top of your deck. So the faster you play, if you play an aggro deck, sometimes you can win out games. If you play a control deck, you have to like wait a while to use some of the higher costing cards. And he uses a lot of characters from Mega Man, from Street Fighter, from Devil May Cry, Resident Evil 2, and I think they just came out with a new set, with a new hero, bringing in Akuma into the game, which is actually pretty cool. So it's a really decent card game. They just had, I think, like their World Championship, which was sponsored by Amazon. So it is definitely a game on the rise that we're keeping an eye on, but MTG Nerd Girl is one of the only ones that is actually doing content for that kind of game, or that game specifically. So there's a quick shout out to her. And then we're finally going to move on to non-trading card game content, which I also consume because you can't just, it's a great time to play card games, but you can't just be playing the card games, right? So the one channel that I'm watching a lot of, that I'm listening a lot of more recently in the last couple of weeks, is the Try Guys. I'm sure you guys have heard of the Try Guys. It used to be a BuzzFeed thing. They broke out 2 years ago. There's 4 of them. They're super funny. One of them has a kid. I have kids. I relate. They're funny. The videos are hysterical. Like, we literally spent the last 2 weeks, we're burnt out. We spent the last 2 weeks watching almost every single video on the Try Guys channel that they had come out with in the last 2 years. And they're good. They're pretty good. So it's a really good time. Plus, they have a podcast called The Tripod. Really informative, kind of like a sneak peek into their lives. Each episode's like at least an hour long. So it's a decent sized podcast. It's a chunky podcast for sure. Next, we're going to talk about David Razzie, another YouTuber that I've been following him for quite a while, for a couple of years now. He does not animations, but like storyboard videos, kind of like that storyboard animation type thing. They mostly are they're all based on his time in school, from high school, from leaving high school to starting art college and all the kind of bullshit that entailed, stuff like that. I went to art school. I know what he's talking about. It's funny. Each video is only like 3 to 5 minutes long, and I think he's only had like 60 videos so far, something like that. Really funny guy, really interesting art style, and it's good videos. It's a nice story that he's weaving together, which is actually pretty cool. Next, more podcasts. We got the Multitude Collective ? They're a group of just friends that do podcasts together. They have the Multitude banner that they kind of created after being so successful as individual podcasters. They got the Potterless podcast, Horse, Join the Party, Spirits, and Wayfinders, I think, as of right now. They got more planning to come in this actually 2020 year. If you guys are fans of Harry Potter, you check out Potterless. It's about a 30-year-old guy that's never read the Harry Potter books, and he's only seen up to like the 3rd movie, I think. And he goes through a couple chapters, like big chunks at a time, with guests that love Harry Potter, and they kind of just deep dive and break it down, and it's actually really funny. There's a lot of stuff that I missed reading Harry Potter as a kid, and I haven't read them anytime recently, but it really gets that drive of like, man, I need to pick up those Harry Potter books again and actually see what happened. Horse is also the same guy, Shoobs, and one of the others from Join the Party, the D&D podcast we'll talk about in a second. They talk about basketball, but not the actual scores, not what you would think of a basketball podcast. It's not really a sports podcast. It's more of like why they watch basketball as a entertainment as opposed to a sport. They're not really focused on the wins and losses. That's actually the tagline. They're more focused on the drama, the Twitter beefs, what's going on in the players' lives, how are they consuming basketball as an entertainment medium. Really interesting, actually bringing me into basketball as a sport and trying to keep up with it. Join the Party is their flagship D&D podcast. I'll just say it like that. Eric Schneider is the DM, and they started out, it's actually the campaign that they were doing just ended, so it hurts a little to talk about it too much, but a lot of the other Multitude creators guest star in an episode here, an episode there. They have other guest stars coming in to play different NPCs. The story is crazy good. The audio for all of these podcasts, the audio editing is amazing. Specifically for Join the Party, where it's this fantasy, low fantasy setting, and they treat it more as a story delivery device as opposed to just a raw D&D podcast. So they'll have moments where they're just role playing character dialogue instead of actually doing D&D turns and stuff like that. There are times where the DM is just describing or monologuing stuff, or they're just kind of like setting the mood and getting the story down right, and then afterwards, after each episode, they'll do like a after party where they kind of just talk about what happened in the episode and break down. That's always the best part, when you get to see the actual like what's going on behind the scenes of, oh my god, this was crazy, I can't believe this happened. And the last one that I actually listened to is Spirits. This is the first one that brought me in, kind of like what started the whole Multitude family as a podcasting network. But Spirits is hosted by Julia Schifini and Amanda McLaughlin. One of them is a history major or like mythology major, something like that, and they'll do a deep dive onto certain mythological / spiritual topics and get drunk. So it's like Mythbusters plus mythology plus alcohol, and it's hilarious. It's super funny. They have this one series where people email them stories of like hometown ghost stories, and some of these stories are like legit crazy. Sometimes they'll have guests on certain topics like Dia de los Muertos or La Llorona. They've done episodes like that. They've done episodes on like weird North American cryptids. They've done stories on Greek mythology, Chinese mythology, different kinds of gods and goddesses and monsters. If you guys are at whatsoever into any of that weird spooky stuff but also want to have a good time, Spirits is the podcast for you. Speaking of D&D, I want to talk about the Not Another D&D podcast. This is from the College Humor alumni's Brian Murphy, Emily Axford, and Caldwell Tanner. They do and they have one other guy, and Jake Hurwitz. It's a little more robust of a D&D campaign because they just have more people, but the story, each episode is super funny. They have incredibly serious moments and paired with the most ridiculous kind of comedy that you'll find out on a podcast. So if you guys want a D&D podcast to listen to and you want to just laugh your pants off, Not Another D&D podcast, super good. Wizard and the Bruiser, I've talked about them a couple of times on the podcast before. They do deep dives on pop culture stuff, edutainment episodes on different animes like Avatar Last Airbender. Blah, blah, blah. They've done a Magic the Gathering episode. They've done a Metal Gear Solid episode. They've done a Hayao Miyazaki episode. They've done I think they did a Walt Disney episode. I'm not entirely sure about that one, but if you guys think of any sort of they've done like a Superman episode. They've done any pop culture hit that has existed in the last couple of years. They've probably done an episode on it, or they're working on doing an episode on it now. They have just, I think in the last year, started really hitting up on their Patreon, and the patrons at a certain tier get to like decide what one of the next episodes is going to be. So you can definitely start finding stuff that you'll like. At least a couple of episodes are like, oh, I love, like they did a Calvin and Hobbes episode, which was amazing. One of the last ones, actually we got a couple. Story Break. Jimmy Wong is brother, the co-creator of Rocket Jump, Freddie Wong of YouTube fame, and some of his other collaborators from various projects. They do a podcast based off of like script writing called Story Break, where usually, I think recently they've been actually doing a script part by part, but usually they'll take an hour and just with one idea create a script and like a story idea based off of whatever that initial idea is within the hour. Actually pretty cool. Some of these movies got like posters by fans. I'm sure some of them might get turned into projects at some point, but it's a really interesting way of how script writing and story breaking as an art form and as like something that happens behind the scenes that not a lot of people talk about, and it's a podcast, so it's cool. How Did This Get Played? More recent podcast that I've been checking out. They play really old retro, not really old, but just really bad games and review them, and it's funny. They play like, I think one of the earlier ones that I listened listened to was Superman 64. It was trash. The last one I listened to, I think, was like Blues Brothers 2000, which came out in like 2001. Stuff like that. They play really bad games, talk about it with a guest, and then they crack jokes, they make fun, they find good reviews on it if they can find any, and it's just a good time podcast. Hello from the Magic Tavern. This is one that I've been listening to for a while now, but I've been like from the start. I feel like it's a little wrong to just start the beginning because they've been going for like 3 or 4 years. It's not a D&D podcast per se, but it is a fantasy type setting, and it's about one guy that gets sucked into this fantasy world through a warp hole at his local Burger King, and he can't get back, but he can still get a little Wi-Fi signal from the Burger King, so he's hosting this podcast to try to get a rescue or try to just let people know about this other world that he found. And he just does the podcast with like a wizard and a shapeshifter, and they just talk with fantastical creatures, and it's almost all impromptu based. It's not like a scripted thing. They kind of just have like a base guideline, like, oh, we're gonna meet this guy and this is like the overarching deal. And then lastly, Due by Friday. I think one of the co-hosts is the co-creator of Cards Against Humanity. This podcast I'll listen to, comes out once a week. It's really smart humor. I don't get half of the jokes most of the time, but it's nice to know that there's podcasts out there like this too. And it gives me like a wider range around stuff that I don't listen to a lot of. It is funny. Like, it is legitimately funny. And I'll sit in the car and laugh listening to the podcast, and sometimes I won't get the joke, and a lot of times I do get the joke. It's a lot of pop culture stuff, but they technically are a challenge podcast, but they don't really talk about the challenge until like the last maybe 15 minutes. Most of it is just them kind of fucking around at the beginning and just having fun. So Due by Friday, yeah, that's all the stuff I listen to and watch, you guys. If you guys ever had any thoughts of like what I do, it's that. It's take care of the kids, hang out with the wife, make content, listen to this stuff when I have time. And if you guys ever have time, check out some of these. These are very highly recommended shows, creators, and podcasts. That being said, we're going to end our episode here. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for to Chaotic for Kawaii Overload, the song that we use in our intro and outros. You guys can find us on Twitter at Hearthwalkers, or me at Wholfie. You can find us on Twitch at Wholfie, or twitch.tv/Wholfie. Email us at hearthwalkers@gmail.com. If you guys have any questions on like a main topic for us to do, or anything that you want help described, or just want to say hi, message us on our socials and say hi. Don't forget to rate us 5 stars and write a review, please, on iTunes so more people can find us. We also have a YouTube channel where we post a lot of stuff at Wholfie. We also do the highlights for our Twitch streams on that. Special thanks to Blue Kitty for putting up with all my stuff. Thank you guys for listening.